The superhero genre is home to some of the most iconic and beloved characters ever created. And over the past 2 decades, superhero movies have proven to be some of the biggest money printers in the history of Hollywood, consistently dominating the box office and shaping modern pop culture. However, many superhero films have crashed and burned miserably, leaving behind a legacy of some of the most unforgettable cinematic disasters. Today, we're diving into 6 of the biggest misfires in the superhero movie genre, starting with Batman and Robin, which is not only considered to be one of the worst superhero movies ever made, but also one of the worst movies ever made. Batman and Robin is well known for being the film that literally killed the Batman franchise in the 90s. After Tim Burton's first 2 Batman films starring Michael Keaton as your boy Bruce Wayne, Warner Brothers was starting to get a bit scared of that Tim Burton nightmare fuel and were disappointed with the box office of Batman Returns. So they brought on Joel Schumacher to take the series in a more family-friendly direction, starting with Batman Forever in 1995, starring Val Kilmer. The movie did well at the box office, but had a mixed response from critics and fans, and Val Kilmer had a bad experience playing Batman and decided not to come back for the sequel. Batman and Robin came out in 1997, and oh boy, what the f is this movie? With George Clooney as Batman and Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, who cracks life-ruining ice puns every 5 seconds.
Allow me to break the ice. I'm afraid that my condition has left me cold to your pleas of mercy. All right, everyone, chill, cool party.
The movie leans further into the campiness that Batman Forever started, but this time it overloads the viewer on cringe. The movie was a box office disappointment and was universally destroyed by critics. As a result, George Clooney was too ashamed to come back for a sequel, and Warner Brothers cancelled all future Batman films planned in the series, including Batman Unchained. The movie was so bad that it not only put this weird little Batman franchise to an end, but it also put the whole superhero genre up in the air for a couple of years and forced studios to rethink how they approached superhero movies. Kevin Feige said in 2009 that Batman and Robin might just be the most important comic book movie ever, because it was so bad that it demanded a new way of doing things. And the movie's failure led to Batman Begins in 2005, which of course kicked off Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. At the very least, Batman and Robin is now considered a so bad it's good movie, and some people have started to defend the movie in recent years. So at least it was good for something, just like how Catwoman is now considered a cult classic for how bad it was. Catwoman was originally developed as a solo spin-off of Batman Returns, with Michelle Pfeiffer set to return to the role. It stayed in development hell for years until Warner Brothers cancelled a Batman vs Superman film scheduled for 2004, and basically panic-produced Catwoman as a replacement. Except the movie has zero faithfulness to the source material and no connection to Batman lore. So as a spin-off, it basically serves no purpose. And the result is one of the worst reviewed movies of all time. With a nonsensical plot and bland characters, god-awful dialogue and cringy cat puns, along with video game style CGI, poor editing and choreography, the film comes off as an unintentional spoof on superhero films. The movie received 7 Golden Raspberry nominations, including a win for Worst Actress for Halle Berry as Catwoman, who accepted the award in person and had this to say about the movie.
First of all, I want to thank Warner Brothers. Thank you for putting me in a piece of god-awful movie.
The film has since become a notorious example of early 2000s camp, and a movie that's celebrated for all the wrong reasons. While the last 2 movies at least had so bad it's good value, we're now getting into the movies that many would say are straight up miserable to watch. Which brings us to that one Fantastic Four reboot from 2015, aka Fant Four Stick. The Fantastic Four are a group of heroes with a huge fan base and a lot of potential for a great film. They're quite literally the foundation of Marvel Comics, being the first superhero team that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created. But so far they just seem to be cursed when it comes to movies. Especially Fant Four Stick, which stands as one of the most disastrous superhero movie productions ever. Instead of delivering the great Fantastic Four film that fans had long been waiting for, the movie instead got 9% on Rotten Tomatoes, bombed at the box office, and is now more famous for its troubled production than the movie itself. The film at first seemed like it had potential. It was directed by Josh Trank, who had just broken out with his first film Chronicle, and the cast was led by some of Hollywood's most promising young stars: Miles Teller, Michael B. Jordan, Kate Mara, and Jamie Bell. However, tensions quickly arose behind the scenes and things fell apart pretty quickly. While Fox wanted the film to be something in the vein of the first Avengers movie, Josh Trank apparently didn't like comic book movies in general and wanted to do a darker take on the genre inspired by body horror films like The Fly. Fox didn't care for Trank's vision and hated his cut of the film, so reshoots were urgently organized to change the ending as well as major plot points without Trank's involvement. The new ending was quite literally made at the last minute, made up of script pieces from the original draft, as well as new ones that were being written on the day of reshoots. There are also reports of erratic behavior from Josh Trank on set, including one incident where Trank and Miles Teller nearly got in a physical fight. And with all the bad press throughout its production, it became clear that this film was destined for failure and there was no saving it. On the very day the film was released, Trank made a tweet blaming the final film on studio interference, saying, "A year ago I had a fantastic version of this, and it would have received great reviews. You'll probably never see it. That's reality though." He quickly deleted the tweet, although the damage was already done. The film became the bomb of the summer, losing over $80 million for the studio, and Fantastic went down as one of the worst superhero movies ever made. Hopefully the upcoming MCU version of the Fantastic Four turns out a little better, but we'll just have to wait and see. Studio interference is fairly common when it comes to making superhero films, and that's something that Zack Snyder knows all too well with his experience on Justice League. Justice League came out in 2017, and on paper it should have been an instant smash hit, being the first live-action depiction of the most popular superhero team of all time. However, the DCEU had already had a pretty bad track record at the time after Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad, so it was pretty hard to build hype and get audiences on board, especially because the film also suffered a troubled production. Zack Snyder originally directed most of the film, but when Snyder had to step down from the film in the middle of post-production after the death of his daughter, the studio hired Joss Whedon to finish off the film. This involved writing and reshooting parts of the film, and even changing the tone to make it more quippy and lighthearted like the MCU movie. The change in directors did not go smoothly, as Joss Whedon was publicly criticized by many of the cast members for his involvement. Gal Gadot said that he threatened her career during reshoots, and Ray Fisher called his behavior gross, abusive, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable. The final cut is believed to be mostly Joss Whedon's movie. The film's cinematographer Fabian Wagner says that only 10% of the original footage shot by him and Snyder was used in the final cut, and screenwriter Chris Terrio even went as far as to call the final cut an act of vandalism. And the result is a confusing mess of a movie that can't decide what it wants to be. It bombed at the box office and lost Warner Brothers an estimated $60 million. While its reviews were not quite as bad as the previous movies on this list, it was still poorly received, and its production was so controversial that it caused fans to start a 3-year campaign demanding Zack Snyder's original cut of the film. The Snyder Cut finally came out in 2021 and was much better received, which just goes to show how much studio interference can kill a movie. But unlike Justice League, which at least kind of had a reason to come out, some movies are made for seemingly no reason. One of the movies that falls under that category is Morbius, starring none other than Jared Leto in the lead role. I've never seen anything quite like what happened to this film. Morbius came out in 2022 as the third film in Sony's Spider-Man universe, and that's a Spider-Man universe without Spider-Man. It follows Dr. Michael Morbius, who becomes a living vampire while trying to cure himself of a rare blood disease. With a generic and incoherent plot, dull performances, and poor editing, the general consensus from critics was that the movie is a soulless mess. The post-credit scenes were also criticized for randomly inserting Michael Keaton's Vulture from the MCU, and even putting him in the trailer in a desperate attempt to get more people to watch the movie. Most critics will say the movie is too boring to be fun, but people created their own fun by turning it into a meme literally overnight. The internet ironically praised it as the best movie of all time, coined the catchphrase "It's Morbin time," and the movie unintentionally became a cultural phenomenon. Possibly the funniest part about all of this is that the memes led Sony to re-release the film a few months later, only for it to flop even harder the second time. The Sony Spider-Man universe didn't catch a break after that, because the next disaster on this list is their very own Madam Web. Just like Morbius, critics tore this movie apart for basically every aspect of it. Its plot, visuals, performances, and dialogue, with many comparing it to Morbius as an unintentional meme and another failure on Sony's part. It was compared to the campiness of early 2000s films like Catwoman, and some even called it the worst superhero movie ever made. The film stars Dakota Johnson in the lead role as Cassandra Webb, a paramedic who gains powers to see the future after a near-death experience. Her powers lead her to try and save 3 young girls, including Sydney Sweeney, who are being hunted by an evil explorer who wants to kill them before they become Spider Women in the future. And almost nothing could save this movie. Right from the moment the trailer came out, audiences were already mocking it, and the cast didn't even try to defend it once it came out. Dakota Johnson said she wasn't shocked by its reception, and Sydney Sweeney even made fun of it on Saturday Night Live.
You might have seen me in Anyone But You or Euphoria. You definitely did not see me in Madam Web.
The final nail in the coffin for the Sony Spider-Man universe was their most recent failure, Kraven the Hunter. At this point, Sony already knew they had lost all hope, so in a last-ditch effort to get more people to watch it, they released the first 8 minutes of the film online before it came out. It didn't work because the film copped the single worst opening weekend for the Sony Spider-Man universe, and its failure caused Sony to cancel all future films in the franchise. They had a number of movies planned, including Sinister Six, but it was pretty clear that they didn't have a clear vision for how this universe would all link together, so it's safe to say calling it quits was the right choice. And in a time where audiences care about superhero films less than ever, you'd hope that the genre as a whole is aiming to improve and put out films that fans actually appreciate rather than churning out meaningless cash grabs. However, creative missteps are always bound to happen, and hot garbage will always grace the big screen from time to time. Anyways, thanks for watching. Please do like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next one.